Policing by consent does not work when the public consent is broken. Today we take a look into a report where the Metropolitan Police has been found to be institutionally racist, misogynistic and homophobic. Welcome back to the channel. So many people have talked before about the term policing by consent. And it's a bit different to being governed by consent. And it's not really what a lot of people think it means. Dealing with the latter first of all, governed by consent does not mean that your individual consent is required for legislation to apply to you. It just means that by a general consensus and parliamentary vote, then you are governed by that government and it creates legislation. Policing by consent is not miles away from this, but it is a different principle. Policing by consent, we'll look at first of all, before we take a look at the report, is essentially a collection of principles put together in 1829, whereby these were issued to every new police officer under what they called general instructions. And they are broadly what you might expect them to be: to prevent crime and disorder as an alternative to the repression by military force and severity of legal punishment. In other words, to keep the peace. To recognise that the power of the police to fulfil the functions and duties is dependent on public approval of their existence, actions and behaviour, and on their ability to secure and maintain public respect. And this is probably one of the most fundamental principles of the general instructions, and there are obviously several others, and I'll link these in the description box below. Notably, to seek and preserve public favour also feature, and to use physical force only when necessary, when the exercise of persuasion, advice and warning is found to be insufficient to obtain public cooperation. In other words, only as much as is necessary. A phrase that you'll hear me use a lot on this channel, particularly when I'm talking about things such as self-defense and things of this nature. Only and no more than is necessary. These are some of the principles the police are to work with in order to obtain the policing by consent. Now, this report has found that this consent has been broken. There are a number of conclusions drawn in this report, and quite staggering and quite shocking conclusions, which I'm going to go through very briefly in this video. These conclusions of this 363-page report are set out right at the outset. Number one, there are systemic and fundamental problems in how the Met is run. Now, of course, it's a large organisation, it's going to be difficult to run, but it highlights that the management of people is poor. And following recent failures of its own staff, particularly in the Sarah Everard case, the abduction and assault in the most horrific way possible and resulting in her death, show that the management of people is most certainly poor. And that's not an isolated case. The report says, we witness clear signs of high stress and pressure among officers due to the nature of the work, dealing with very stressful and upsetting situations, working with traumatized, vulnerable and dangerous people, and often facing daily abuse from the public. So this is a problem in and of itself, and it's perpetual and it's circular. But nonetheless, the management of people it found was poor. Sergeants and inspectors are expected to manage a very large number of constables and junior staff at its core feature of their work, within the time and the tools to do so. Under the current Met systems, it's easier for them to ignore poor performing officers or let those with conduct issues get away with bad behaviour. In an organisation where people are its principal asset, the vital role of human resources has been outsourced and is too distant from local policing needs. And there's far more within that particular conclusion, again, which I'll link in the description below. The second conclusion it draws, the Met has not managed the integrity of its own police service. And again, a lot more detail about that. Number 3, the Met's new leadership represents a welcome change of tone and approach. However, deep-seated cultures need to be tackled in order for change to be sustained. And it talks here too much hubris, pride in other words, and too little humility. The organisation has a we know best attitude and dismisses external views and criticisms and adopts the attitude that no one outside the Met can understand the special nature and the unique demands of their work. In a sense, there is a truth to that, but that doesn't mean that it should be run with, as this says, too much hubris and too little humility. It is a unique role, special nature of work, unique demands, and it's not work for everybody. But as this report suggests, this has become a serious weakness, stops them hearing and understanding other views, including those of Londoners, and prevents them from bringing in external help, co-opting experts and stakeholders to provide support and challenge. And defensiveness and denial, never a good combination. Speaking up is not welcome. Keeping your head down, looking the other way, and telling people, especially senior officers, what they want to hear is the way things are done in the Met, which to me suggests an atmosphere which is going to encourage dissent to fester. Fourthly, Londoners have been put last. The front lines deprioritised. One thing that I've referred to in my videos before now, where this so-called front line of tackling crime head-on right at the front as it presents has been a problem, in that people just don't feel that they can receive that support. Local policing has been fractured by the loss of skilled civilian staff, especially crime analysts and support staff. Now, indeed, the support network and body of any organisation such as this is absolutely key. Number 5, London's women and children have been left even further behind through deprioritisation and despecialisation of public protections, put women and children at greater risk than necessary. Number 6, the Met lacks accountability and transparency. Despite being a £4 billion public institution, it should be transparent and accountable for the services, yet while maintaining operational responsibility for policing decisions. Yet all too often it's been unaccountable to the public for their representatives. Number 7, discrimination is tolerated, not dealt with, and has become baked into the system. This is something that features in many comments on many videos that I do about the police. As you'll know on my channel, I take a view that cooperation is usually better, and being polite, courteous and respectful is usually better. But this report highlights and suggests that if discrimination is tolerated within the force and not dealt with and become baked into the system, with widespread bullying, particularly of those with protected characteristics, it says, a profound culture across the Met that incentivizes people to look, act and sound the same, and resistance to difference. And it talks about all sorts of protected characteristics within it, including sexism, misogyny, homophobia, illness and disability, all of which should obviously not be tolerated in any form at all. And obviously it goes into depth about this. Remember, this is just a summary of the conclusions. This is a 363-page report. Number 8, the Met is in danger of losing its way and consent is broken. Remembering the principles going back of policing, this is what we're referring to by consent. Policing by consent. And essentially, as explained by the notable police historian Charles Reith in the new study Police History in 1956, it was a philosophy of policing in the unique history throughout the world because it derived not from fear but almost exclusively from public cooperation with the police, induced by them designedly by behaviour which secures and maintains them for approval, respect and affection of the public, which the report suggests is broken. So it needs attention. It says the Met's key values, the College of Policing's Code of Ethics, And the Pelion principles all provide clear standards and direction for how the organisation should operate and how it should police London. However, these values and principles have not been front and centre of the Met's strategic or operational approach, either internally or externally. It has been disfigured by austerity and the decisions that were made during that period, alongside changes in the crime mix and societal expectations. The Met has been losing its way, and the worst aspects of its culture have impeded its ability to recognise this. So a damning set of 8 headed conclusions preceding a 363-page report. And you'll be pleased to hear a set of recommendations fixing the Met, what to do, cleaning up the Met, cleaning up and sorting out institutional and widespread bullying, discrimination, and other unacceptable behaviours. New patterns of work, rebuilding trust, and new police deals for Londoners. To rebuild trust and confidence and consent, there should be a new deal for Londoners. Frontline officers are those who Londoners see and depend on the most from day to day, but feel demoralised, let down by their leaders and exposed to high stress and pressure. This goes into a shocking amount of detail as to what to do. New leadership, new management, new oversight and accountability. What we're really talking about through this report is a rebuild. And here it says, if sufficient progress is not being made at the points to further review, more radical structural options such as dividing up the Met into national, specialist and London responsibilities should be considered. Let's think about this for a moment. This report is saying if these issues, which are widespread, deep-rooted, deep-seated, tolerated, encouraged even, are not resolved, then other more radical structural options such as dividing up the Met into national, specialist and London responsibilities, breaking up the Met, is what this report is saying is necessary if this is not achievable with these changes. And then it goes on to an introduction to the report as to why it says everything that it says and why it makes those recommendations. There are certain positives that it refers to, but broadly speaking, this is a sort of final call for the Met Police. It is a damning report of deep-seated institutional discrimination and intolerable behaviours that need to be changed. And without doing so, this report suggests the only other option is going to be a radical reform and potentially even breaking up the Met itself into subdivisions and specialisms and national and regional responsibilities. So for those of you that have had concerns about the police and how the police services run in London, in the Metropolitan Police, this report will bring you some sort of comfort and relief in the sense that your concerns are not ill-founded, but at the same time that it's been given attention and there are solutions presented. And the ultimate solution, if those solutions fail, is to break up the Met and to reorganise and redistribute those responsibilities. So as always, I would welcome your thoughts and your comments in the box below. But this is quite a damning report. It is a lengthy report, and I will link this report and all of the data that it contains and news reports in that regard in the description below. Please do go and check it out. There's obviously a lot of work gone into this report. It hasn't just been a short-lived expedition to investigate what's going wrong with the Met. So as I say, please remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel. And as I dig through this report, I may well bring you further videos with further details of bits that I read, things that concern me. But for now, that is the overview of this report. Please do check it out. Make sure you subscribe, and I thank you all for watching.